Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Achieve More podcast. I'm Anthony, better known as Picksburgh on YouTube. You can check me out over there if you're interested in seeing this podcast in video format. I also have vlogs that I do with my girlfriend. We go doing all kinds of crazy things where we travel and have fun. With me, as always, is my co-host Michael over at Huddle Card Collection. Michael, you just want to give a brief rundown to anybody that's new to the podcast?
Yeah, hey, Huddle Card Collection on all the social media stuff. Basically, my channel talk a lot about sports cards, collecting, selling, whatever, all kinds of memorabilia, whatever it may be. Not just necessarily cards, but whether it's baseballs, footballs, action figures, and anything related to that collectibles, but more geared towards the sports or sports entertainment, market.
Yeah,
Happy to
and
be here as
I
always.
saw
Thanks, Anthony.
I saw most recently you got a really nice collectible there of a real American, huh?
Oh yeah, beautiful autographed Hulk Hogan picture.
Yeah.
Picked up at the Nationals. Really, very happy with it.
Yep. If you guys are interested in that, go over to Huddle Card Collection. You can check out one of his latest videos where he shows it off.
Yeah.
But without further ado, we have a special guest today that I'm excited to introduce. We have Mike Brevik from Cyberdogs, and he runs a website, a marketing company. He has a podcast. He has a YouTube channel, and he has a lot of great knowledge that he's going to share with us here today. Mike, before we get started, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mike Brevik. I am actually located in West Central Minnesota. I'm a kind of my thing is I'm branding, I'm marketing. I have a marketing company, and that's kind of my day job. And some of the things you guys were talking about, like, yeah, I mean, I dabble in the collectibles and sports memorabilia and stuff myself. So happy to be here and kind of excited to talk with you guys. So
Yeah, we've been chomping at the bit to have you on,
Yeah.
man. And uh, I mean, just from two guys that have a podcast that are trying to grow the thing, just the knowledge that you have as a fellow podcaster is going to be
yeah.
valuable, but also the knowledge you have as a marketer is going to be super valuable to us as well. So, to start off right out the gate, what advice do you have to newer podcasters or specifically to us? You know what I mean? Feel free to rip us apart. I don't know how much of our podcast you've seen or how much of our content you're familiar with, but if you're not, feel free to just use it from the perspective of new podcasters, like what advice you would give, not only as a podcaster but as a marketer.
No, I mean I did a little scouting before we hopped on, and no, I think you guys are doing a good job. And the advice I would give you, which I think is kind of what you're already doing, is just be yourselves and just churn through and plow out content. Like most people, I'm sure you guys went through this too. When I first started, I was overthinking everything. Like I couldn't stand the sound of my own voice. I'm like, God, that sounds really stupid. Like I don't know, I was trying to be Howard Stern, or I was trying to make it
Mm-hmm.
like some kind of a high production radio
Yeah.
show. And it's like, that's not what this is. It's
Mm-hmm.
more, I mean, and you'll naturally get better and you'll get smoother and things will kind of sort themselves out. But at the beginning, man, just don't overthink it. Just make content and talk about the things you like talking about, because
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that come off naturally. And just spoiler alert, you're going to have episodes and you're going to have conversations with people that just don't go well. Don't
Mm-hmm.
overthink it. I mean, you can always just bag it and not use that content. I personally would just say, just post it, move on to the next one, and just
Mm-hmm.
don't overthink it. Because the thing about podcasts, which is it's so true, is that the people who like your content like your content. Like
Yeah.
they're not gonna judge you on one dud interview, or they're just not they're not overthinking it. So why should you, basically?
Yeah,
It's
that
funny
makes a
you
lot
say
of
that because I
sense.
know when I first started doing videos for my first channel and stuff like that, I tell people, yeah, that video was done in one take. Now, it may have taken me 3 days to do it because I tried
Yeah.
doing it about 45 times and I was so bad at editing that I would like, well, heck, I'm just going to go ahead and start over. So I'd get 15-minute video. Yeah, when you saw it, it was a 15-minute video, but it probably took me about 8 hours to go ahead and do, because I was like, crap. And rather than be myself and show a mistake or something along those lines, I was like, nope, that's not good enough. It has to be perfect. So you're right from that standpoint. It really is tough when you begin of wanting to be perfect, and you're right, you shouldn't have to be.
Well, and you like, I'm not going to tell you which ones because I don't want you to go listen to them. But there's some episodes at the beginning of mine where, I mean, you probably maybe wouldn't notice it, but I do because it's my own voice. But I'm like doing some manufactured version of myself. Like I'm trying to do a radio voice, and I mean subconsciously maybe I didn't know I was doing it, but clearly the nerves were getting to me. So as I was recording those early episodes, yeah, I mean, I was overthinking it. And it's really like a couple things. One is just don't worry about it, get through the content. But the other thing is that you don't know when people are going to pick up your podcast and in what stage in the process. Because even like when I talk to customers about it and stuff, I think we all have this belief that people who like our content are going to go ahead and start at 1 and go to 2 and go to 3 and go to 4. That's not how it works. They end up finding an episode that's about topic XYZ, and they jump in at episode 60, and they might never progressionally listen to any of the other ones. They're just going to jump around and listen to the ones they like anyway. So, to really think through and worry about every episode as though it's this big standalone, piece of brilliance, it's not. Like, just plow through the content and hit the topics you like, and the people who kind of resonate with you, they're gonna like it no matter what anyway. So it's really just be comfortable, have a good time, and have good conversations, and really bring people on that you want to talk to. Like that's the one thing that, I mean, you want your audience to like it too, but naturally, if they're your people, they're probably going to like it.
For sure. That's great advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Definitely take all of that into, account, especially moving forward as we continue to progress with this podcast. So out of curiosity, what is it like seeing a brand like start from nothing and become something big? How has that experience been for you?
It's fun. I mean, it's always fun to see something be successful, but for me, like I'm kind of competitive, and I like, seeing the forest through the trees, and I like to, solve problems and kind of decode things. And that's, at this stage in my life, that's the competitive piece that, that's the enjoyment I get out of it. Cause it's this process of, like you said, creating something from nothing. And in some ways it's like proving people wrong. It's about shepherding people towards a commonality or something like that. So it's really fun and cool and strategic to be able to pull that off. And what's really cool about it is what it does when you can see it energizing the audience or the fans or the client. You see it once in a while, and I'll just throw it because you mentioned the Hulk Hogan thing earlier. You see it, like, so I'm a wrestling guy too, but when you watch, like, back in the day, if you remember, like WCW and early on in WWF, which is now WWE, you'd see a guy come in for the first time and it's his first whack at whatever character he's playing. And you just kind of go, oh, that guy's got something. Oh, this is going to pop. We'll give this guy, 3 months and he'll be, and you can kind of sense the energy and sense the feeling that this is something that's going to gain traction. I just know it. And sometimes you're wrong. And then sometimes that guy ends up being the main event at SummerSlam 2 years later. And you're like, I knew it. And that's what it feels like. Like, cause you kind of know, when when something's going to pop, and that, like, I think this is the one that's going to do something. And you're kind of like an early adopter of that mindset. But when you see people jumping on board with it, it's pretty exciting. Cause I mean, it's validating in many ways, but at the same time, it gives you, you start to see what should be done next as well. So like when we work with companies and we actually are part of the process of cultivating and creating that brand, as we see the momentum rolling forward, we also, inherently kind of have the vision to go, well, here's now what you should do. Well, if you do that and that works, then you should do this. So we're kind of layering in on top of that thing too along the way and helping them along with that journey. It's pretty exciting. And I think it's exciting for them, especially when they get to the point where they love their brand, when they really love their brand and they're taking it as far as like doing a vehicle wrap, or they're getting their own swag made, or when they're loud and proud about it, it's pretty rewarding. Yeah.
Well, how does that work from a standpoint of you go and you have a newer company, you sit down with them, like how does the process of figuring out the marketing, or or advertising, whatever you want to call it, of that company, how does that like work?
Well, for me, there's many marketing's a broad term. There's many tactical pieces, whether it's paid ads or, you're setting up a sales funnel, or, there's kind of tactical pieces that we don't even start with, or we don't even get to until we really calibrate and define what that brand is all about. So for me, like, it's really about an exploration, a discovery process at the beginning. So like, if you wanted to build a brand and you came to me, the first thing I'm going to do is start asking you questions to learn about who you are, why it is you want to do this, what it is about you that's unique, what is it that you think your brand offers that nobody else does. Like, I'm really going to dig into all these supporting pieces that kind of build up and almost form the secret sauce of your brand in a way, so that I can create that representation that hopefully matches that. So for two reasons. One, because I want it to be authentically unique and I want it to pop in that sense that you've provided me all this kind of secret sauce type information that goes into it. But secondly, so that as we go forward, I've already got the roadmap mapped out because you already answered all the questions for me. Plus, you're going to go out and you're going to accurately represent that brand because it's all based off the stuff you gave me. That's why, like, brand authenticity and being, I mean, it's kind of a cliche buzzword, but brand authenticity is so important in that process because it calibrates you to the brand and the brand to you. And if you're out there selling it, pitching it, endorsing it, and kind of being the spokesperson of it, it's going to come so naturally and so easy for you to talk about it that it's just going to make sense for people. And again, if they're your people, great. If they're not, that's fine too. But within that kind of that funnel of your brand, you're going to be really dialed in from the onset. And that's important. A lot of people skimp on the brand, or they won't spend money or time there at the beginning because they're off to the races on so many other things. And in my opinion, you start off kind of on a disjointed first step, and you got to remedy that at some point. Whether you're 3, 5, 6 years into the process, sooner or later you got to call a timeout and say, hey, I got to go back and kind of calibrate this. There's something not working in my brand or in my company. And that's tough to do after you've already started. When you're too far down the road, it's that much more difficult. So at the beginning, like, that's when you need to do it. Spend the time. If you've got the money and the budget, like, figure out a way to just do the best you can with it out of the gate, because it'll make everything else after that so much easier. Even from a podcast standpoint, like, be yourself from the beginning, craft that vision from the beginning, because 200 episodes in, it's that much harder to undo everything you just did.
Right.
So
For sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Let me ask you this. What would you say, is there anything unique from working with like a larger company to a smaller company from the marketing standpoint? Is there anything like you notice that sets like a larger company apart outside of the fact that they're just larger, they have more people, they have more money? Or is it like you were talking about, secret sauce, like something special that makes these larger companies from a marketing standpoint?
I mean, there's probably 1,000 ways I can answer this, but I would say the number one difference between large companies and small companies is belief. Large companies have been there and done that, so they have the confidence and the belief to know that they can do it again. Small companies, they're scared. They're like, I don't know if I can do this, or they don't have the confidence. That's the biggest difference. Honestly, because like you'd mentioned it, like, yeah, there's differences in size of budget and teams and resources. And like, if you really break it down, Nike has a lot more of an advantage in an X, Y, and Z situation than, say, even my own company does. But when it all comes down to it, we're all playing the same game. We're both trying to grow our numbers. We're both trying to be more strategic. We're both trying to find customers. We're both trying to sell product. Like the challenges and kind of the different things that we're working through, we're working through a lot of the same issues, the same challenges, but just at scale, it's different. Like you said, their budgets, their resources, they have a deeper pool to pull from, but the challenges are the same. And even the platforms that we're working on are the same. We're working on similar website platforms, whether it be WordPress or Webflow or Shopify or whatever it is. And even the social media platforms, everybody's from small business to large business. They're all on TikTok. They're all on Facebook. They're all on LinkedIn. Like, we're all playing kind of with the same tools. But the biggest difference is, Nike gets up there and they believe they can hit a home run every time. So they're taking big swings. And again, their budgets and stuff are different, but that belief is huge. So like, one of the things I always tell my clients is you don't have to spend $1 million to look like $1 million brand. I mean, if you have $1 million, great, I'll take it. But you don't necessarily have to spend that to look like $1 million brand. But you got to go into it with the belief. You got to be a believer in your own brand.
Is it? I mean, I think I don't know if this. I think I know the answer to this question, but from your dealings with the different size businesses, is it easier for a larger company to take a chance on something than smaller companies?
It is, because it's more forgiving. If you have the budget to make mistakes and to try things, I mean, obviously you don't have to sweat about it as hard. I mean, nobody wants to make the mistakes. Let me put it that way.
Right.
But it's a lot more forgiving. Now, if you jump up to like a Nike level or, some of these huge brands, even their mistakes look good. They might not result in sales. Like, I'm sure, I mean, you could Google it. You could probably go look at the top 10 worst Super Bowl commercials of all time, and the brands that you would see in that list would be massive brands, and most of us would be like, well, I didn't know that failed. The only reason that it probably made that list is because the sales didn't equate to what they spent on that ad, something like that. But nobody would really know that because those brands are still around. They're still successful. They're still, like, it's a lot more forgiving, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
To them, it might be a failure. For the rest of us, it's, probably just kind of falls in line with everything else they do because they're huge, but, for a small and medium-sized brand, you got to take, you can't afford for it to fail.
True.
If I had the money to spend on and make a Cyberdog Super Bowl commercial, I can't afford for this thing to fail.
Right.
Some of the huge brands can, obviously.
Good point.
I mean, going that route, you've worked with some major brands like Nike, Jordan, Under Armour, Harley Davidson, like, just to name a few. Is it more personally gratifying for you as somebody who does this for a living to work with a massive company like that, or to work with one of the smaller companies we've been talking about, and to see that small company really just take the next leap and become something great? Which one of those would be more personally fulfilling for you?
Honestly, I think it's probably working with the small to medium-sized brands now, because I'm not geeking out as much over the big ones as I used to. So like, the first time I ever got to work with a big brand and to experience a Nike conference room and to really just kind of walk through that process, I don't think it was my ego necessarily that I was, stroking. It was more just the the kid in me that was kind of geeking out over the fact that, like, it was more that than anything else. And the pressure, that, like, I don't know, a sense of accomplishment and the pressure to do well. And there was a lot going on in that process. But once I'd experienced that a few times and traded some emails, even to get an email from somebody from Nike the first time was just, just wow. Like it was like the craziest thing I've ever experienced. But, having done that plenty of times, it's really not that big a deal anymore. And it's still cool, don't get me wrong. And for anybody who hasn't done it, it's cool. I'm gonna tell you it's very cool. But it's not as mind-blowingly different than I thought it was. So, like, just an example, like the first time I worked with Nike kind of in depth, like, I really truly expected Nike to be a different experience. I expected them to have all the answers. I expected them, like, they don't put their pants on one leg at a time like the rest of us. They're Nike. This is going to be some crazy stuff. That's just how I had it in my head. And they were very normal. They were like everybody else. They were asking and talking about the same questions that everybody else talked about. And, like, it just really normalized the process for me. And it was still cool, don't get me wrong, but it erased this idea of, like, this godlike experience. It just wasn't like that. And what I learned from that was really that, like, Nike's still cool. They're Nike, but every other brand, they're very similar in the challenges and different things that they're trying to do. So my perspective on working with big brands really changed at that time. So to answer your question, like, I think just from a general client perspective, I get more personal satisfaction out of working with the small to medium sized brands, but I do get a professional kind of accomplishment type high off of working with big brands, because it makes you feel like you're doing something right. And there's something to be said for that too, where I think there's value in that. But I do personally like helping and just, helping the little guy do something too. Because, the big guys have plenty of guys like me where they can get the answers almost anywhere. But the little guys, medium-sized guys, they need somebody in their corner, and that's pretty personally satisfying. And then I'll throw in a third equation to this is I really like working on the stuff that I geek out about.
Yeah.
I like working with DC and Marvel comic book artists. Like, they don't, I don't make a lot of money helping those guys out, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool. It's cool to help the art community, and it's cool to do stuff like that where it just kind of energizes your creative side a little bit.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to do something in sports. Just, I don't know really what that means or what I would want to do, but, like, if I could build a website for Hulk Hogan, like, that'd be the coolest thing ever.
Oh,
That would be awesome.
That would just, that the 12-year-old in me would be like, yeah,
Can you imagine how wild Hulkamania would run if you built that website?
Oh my God. Like, yeah, I mean, little stuff like that. Like, that's, I mean, we obviously we're in business to make money and be successful and that kind of stuff. And you gotta keep the lights on. But I do like chasing some of those passion projects too, and just having fun with it, because that's what you do. So
that's really, really cool.
So I was going to ask you a question as you're talking about, working with the different size companies and everything. How does a company know when it's time to reach out to someone like you? If that if that makes, like, what I'm saying is, like, how does a company know, hey, you know what, man, we need.
I don't want this to sound like a sales pitch. So
no, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, for one, you'd have to ask them to really know, but I'll give you my educated guess. I think when they're looking for a guy like me or a company like mine, I think they want to get somewhere unique, and I think they want to get somewhere that they're not getting from the traditional agency. I think, not that, a lot of agencies do a lot of amazing work, but I think there's a kind of a traditional standard that maybe becomes kind of white noise after a while. And I think there's some companies out there that, I hope mine is one of them. But I think there's companies out there like Lincoln Design, Fried Design. Like, there's some really creative agency type companies out there that, like, we want to do something different. We want to do something out of the box, and we want some very straight shooting collaboration and creativity. When they're ready for that, I think they call guys like us. I think they, it's, if you guys remember, like in the 80s, remember the show The A-Team? Like,
Yeah.
if you got a problem that can't get solved anywhere else, you call in the A-Team. Like, that's
Yeah.
how I feel about it, because I just think there's a place for it. Like, I think there's some traditional stuff that, that they budget for, and that's just part of their annual routine. But I think those certain projects call for something different. They call for something special, and they call for something a little unique. And I think that's what companies like mine and Fried and like Lincoln Design, I think that's what we offer. Is you're going to get something different here, whether you like it or not. Yeah.
I think that's awesome too, that you shout out the other companies too. You know what I mean? Like, whereas like people listening, they could all come to you, but you're like, hey, these are some really good options too. So that shows that you are really about community and collaboration, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much an all ships rise with the tide kind of guy, and I've said it on other podcasts and stuff too. Like, I geek out at other people's stuff. So like, I mean, Google it, Lincoln Design Co.
Yeah,
amazing stuff. Like, they do some amazing work, and
I'm sure you guys all learn from each other.
God, I hope they learn from me. I sure learned from them. The thing about it is like, these guys are so highly unique. It's like, it's hard to be competitive. It's like, I look at it like almost from like a sports analogy, that, it's hard for Michael Jordan to not respect Larry Bird, and Larry Bird to not respect Magic, because yeah, they're all in the same game, but they're so unique, and they're so competitive, and they're so, it's hard not to respect each other, because like, you just, your game recognizes game, and you're just, you want to study these guys, and you want to in some ways mimic them. Like, I'll fully, like, as much as I respect those guys, like, I'm jealous of them sometimes. I'm like, oh man, like, did you see what these, like, I'm just geeking out over their stuff, which,
that's awesome.
I don't know if they're looking at me or not, but I'm looking at them.
Yeah.
So,
and that's good, because iron sharpens iron, and you see what works for one person in this space, and you can even adopt some of the things that work, and you see something that doesn't work out, you can know not to pivot and go away from that. Speaking of the respect you have for these guys, have you had any great mentors over the years, or just anybody that you looked up to that made you want to get into this line of work?
yeah, I've had a couple. I mean, in high school, I actually I applied for a contest. It was called the Minnesota Art and Mentorship Program, and it was a drawing or artistic contest, and I actually lost. And one of the guys who was going to be a mentor in this whole thing, it was a summer type thing. It was through the school, but anyway, he was a local artist, and he actually reached out to my mom afterwards, and basically cornered my parents and said, hey, I thought Mike did a really good job. In some ways, I thought maybe he should have won. I'd like to just offer him the mentorship. And I went into it like, well, some old guy wants to hang out with me. What's going on? Like, I didn't know what was going on. And I ended up taking him up on it. And I mentored underneath him, kind of from a cartooning and illustration standpoint, from the time I was probably 14, 15 till I was in my mid 20s, and he just, and I not only learned a ton from him, just from an artistic standpoint, but like, just the idea, like, so you just do this, you just draw and paint all day, and people pay you money, and like just the idea of being a business owner, a freelancer, an artist, how to monetize his work. Like, I didn't know enough to ask the right question. I mean, even looking back, if I knew then what I know now, there's a lot of questions I would have asked. But to witness it and be able to kind of just process the idea that somebody could do this, it's really what led me to, kind of going to school for what I went to school for, and eventually, having the guts to go out on my own. Because when you're a kid, like, is that even possible that
Yeah.
somebody will just pay me to draw pictures someday? Like, that's a pretty lofty goal. And as you know, like, most parents aren't encouraging you to do stuff like that. They don't want you to go out there and draw pictures for a living. So yeah, I mean, so that was probably my biggest mentor. Is his name is Gene Leesocker. He's no longer with us, but yeah, he was probably my biggest mentor. And then through business, like, I've had several. Like, I'm a big believer in not only seeking this kind of information, but I've had business coaches for the last 9 years. And just from all aspects, from finance to leadership and training, and just leading people. And like, I've really tried to surround myself with people like that can help me along the way, because I mean, I want to get there as fast as I can, and I don't want to have to learn the hard way every time. Like, this whole thing's hard enough. Like, I'm bumping my head on the daily. So if anybody can help me avoid some of that, like, I'm all about it. So
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have any advice for people that may want to do what you do, may want to get into marketing? We talked before this. I told you, hey, I'm one of the people that, went to school, got a degree, theoretically could be in this space, but doing something completely different. And you'd mentioned there's a lot of people like myself that have the tools or the want to do this, that just either failed, the dream didn't work out, or it's just been hard for them to kind of get into the role that they kind of want. What would you say to those type of people?
I think it's a lot of things. And I'm gonna go all over the place, and you tell me if
Mhm.
one stands out to you. But I think you got to have some sense of direction when you come out of school. Like, it's a blank canvas of, you could do 50 things. It's very broad, and you're just lucky to find a job sometimes when you come out of school as a graphic artist, or at the time they called it commercial art. But like, you're just lucky to find a job, and that's
Mhm.
fine. Find that job, get paid, and like, start somewhere. But you really, if your goal is to get to the comic book industry versus, like, I want to do illustration versus design or whatever it is, you got to work that hustle on the side, and you really have to carve your path towards that thing you want, or you're just going to wake up 10 years down the road doing the same thing that you don't want to do.
Mm.
And to me, that's when people quit. They're like, I didn't get into this to design black and white ads, and then they just quit. And it's like, but who did you expect to show you another way or show you another direction? Like, it's on you to figure that out, and you have to push that direction. So like, I mean, I'll just throw some examples out there, but like, you see a lot of guys in the comic book industry that are trying to get to Marvel.
Mhm.
And what's the goal? Like, how are you trying to get to Marvel? Are you going to shows? Are you building your portfolio? Are you doing independent comics? Are you, like, you have to push and carve that path until somebody finds you, recognizes you, or you get that opportunity. It's not easy. And I think a lot of people just sit and wait for the phone to ring. Like, I'm just throwing stuff on Instagram waiting for the phone to ring, and they're
Mm.
not calling. And it's like, well, they're probably not going to. Like, you have to really push and drive and grind forward in order to do that. And I think, you have to be open to all the criticism. You can't get your feelings hurt. You got to develop tough skin, and you got to be willing to, respect other people's work and collaborate. Like, you talked about a little bit about it earlier with the like the Lincoln Design guys and the Fried Design and these guys. Like not only am I studying them and watching what they do and just admiring what they do, but like, I'm finding opportunities to try to collaborate with guys like that. And I'm putting my pound of flesh out there hoping that they will too, because that's kind of what it takes. You got to take some risks, and you got to take some big swings. And in art school, I will say, like in graphic design school, like they don't tell you that. They just put you through the paces, and they tell you what you need to know from a kind of a skill level standpoint, and kind of a tradesman type approach. But they don't really talk about the hustle, the grind, the kind of the competitiveness you got to have to get somewhere. And I will say that there's a lot of graphic artists that just, they don't want to do that. They just want to design stuff and go home at the end of the night and be done with it. And that's fine. There's a spot for those people too. But I think the ones who truly want to just do creative stuff and like try to bend the mold a little bit each time they do something, those guys have to develop that tough skin and that grind and that ability to, do stuff without being asked. That's the big thing is, this is the first time in my career I've never had a side hustle, because my side hustle is now my full-time hustle. So from the time awesome. I got out, well, actually from high school, I was doing caricatures and drawing pictures and doing things even in high school that got me to school. And then in school, I was doing that. Plus I started framing paintings, and I started kind of going down that route. And then after I got my first job out of college, then I was doing side work for 25-ish years, before I started my own company. And a lot of it was, you get that side hustle money, and you need a little beer and pizza money. And that's part of why I did it. But the other part is because I wanted to do the things I wanted to do. And you don't always get that through your employer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Very true.
Yeah. Now, in this line of work, you working with some of these big brands, is there anybody like famous that you've ever specifically worked with on any project that you're allowed to, I guess, talk about?
Not necessarily from the big brand standpoint, but like a couple things. I've gotten to be inside a lot of kind of cool conversations, which painted me a picture as to how some of these big brands work, not just from a creative and social media and a marketing side, but like even from a Nike side, and I equate this to like business, that everything you see on the market today from Nike, they made those decisions probably 18 to 24 months ago. So like,
wow.
So like things that feel relevant to you, and not that they're not making decisions in real time as well, but like their lines, their shoes, the research, the market study, all the really strategic intelligent stuff that goes into them launching, the Nike machine, like that stuff was figured out a long time ago. So when I think about my own business and how, I'm looking at, Q4 coming up, I should have been making Q4 decisions probably, at least 6 months ago. And to be able to forecast and create a vision for yourself, like I think that is super, I think it's super overlooked, but I think it's super interesting when you think about these big brands and just how well, kind of manicured they are from a planning standpoint. Like they really have their stuff figured out. And it's pretty fascinating, because they got to get a lot of people on the same page with some of this stuff, and I'm sure they do it in waves depending on what the department is and what the product is and who they're endorsing behind it, as far as like a celebrity or an athlete. But yeah, just the business intelligence part, like I thought that was super fascinating in working with a lot of these big brands, and even across industry, even working with like a Milwaukee Tool and how much thought goes into the things that they do. And I mean, Milwaukee Tools one, you can look them up as well. I mean, they are so deep into R&D, like their technology and their commitment to innovation is just insane. And most people just, relegate them down to a tool company. Like they're just a tool company. And it's like, they're a lot more than a tool company. Like they do so much stuff. It's just crazy. And even from what's interesting, even like Milwaukee Tool is a great example, whether you're looking at Nike or Milwaukee Tool, how important branding is to them. Like you go to their website, look at their product, look at, even the packaging that their product comes in. There's no question that they completely understand the power of brand. They understand the power of brand consistency. Like they're telling brand stories. Like they are just totally bought in on the whole thing. And it's fascinating because there's still a lot of brands, big and small, that just haven't adopted that mindset yet. And you don't have to look too far to see companies that are just killing it. And I'm not saying again that Nike, Milwaukee, whoever, not that they don't make amazing products, and their products are a lot of representation of what they do, but they also know the vehicle that gets them there is brand. They know that. And specifically to answer your question, like if I was to name, one opportunity or one celebrity type scenario that kind of melted my brain, it was the ability or the opportunity to work with Dan Jurgens was probably the biggest opportunity. I mean, just because personally it geeked me out, and the 10-year-old in me really got a kick out of it. So,
That's awesome.
And if you don't know who Dan Jurgens is, he's probably on the Mount Rushmore of comic book artists and writers and creators. He wrote The Death of Superman. He's the creator of Booster Gold. Like if you look him up in the DC Comics lore, like he's a big deal. And to be able to build a website for him and to even connect with him personally, it was pretty huge. And I'll be honest, I was like a teenage girl at a Taylor Swift concert. Like it was,
Yeah,
it was pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of times, you mentioned social media, and basically I got two questions. Number one, how has social media influenced the aspect of marketing a company? Number one, and number two would be, does it level out the I'm not probably not the right, but does it level out the playing field a little bit because it is easier for a lot of companies to access it?
I think the answer is yes to the second part of your question about leveling the playing field, but no at the same time. Because if you go into it with intention and you're a big brand and you've got budget and ad spend and like you've got the resources to create content, you definitely have leverage and you have more tools in your toolbox than the small guy, 100%. But there's never a day or an opportunity for the small guy to not go viral too. Like it doesn't take much for the small guy to blow up if he does the right thing and he's at the right place at the right time. Now it's catching lightning in a bottle. The ability for Nike or Kim Kardashian or whatever you want to say, the ability for them to have content that hits millions of views is easier, obviously, because they have these larger audiences and larger awareness, but it doesn't mean the small guy can't experience that on some level. Like you look at in the last year, you look at it like a comedian, like a Matt Rife, like the exposure that guy's gotten, and it wasn't lightning in a bottle, but yeah, he hit on the algorithm and he created some content that built momentum, and all of a sudden it's like he was an unknown comedian, and now all of a sudden he's selling out Madison Square Garden. Like or most recently, look at the Hawk 2 girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what a fluke, man. Like, but look at what's happening with her. So like, and just for the record, that's not common. Like these aren't things that happen to everybody, but when it does happen, oh yeah, it puts you in a totally different category. And being ready for that and kind of playing in that space and hoping that someday it can happen to you, I think that's part of the excitement in the game around it. But to the first part of your question, like, yeah, social media, and I was an early adopter to social media. So I started on social media in 2005. So a lot of it was just starting out, and it was just like, nobody really even knew what it was, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying I jumped on it because I had some grand premonition of what it would be. I jumped on it because it was free. Like I jumped on it because it was free. I was in my job at the time, I was trying to grow awareness around the website that I was working on at the time and the company I worked for. It was all about free for me, and free quickly translated into cool, because we're like, man, this is kind of cool, and you can find these people and there's community, and then all of a sudden cool turned into this thing that just it started building its own momentum. Like and I don't know how possible this would be anymore, the way the algorithms work and all this stuff, but like at that time we took we organically built, I believe it was about a 65,000 person following on that Facebook page, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that was huge. Like to organically get it from 0 to 65,000 was like, that was just like, oh my God, that was huge. And then we took it from 65,000 to over 1 million in 5 months.
Oh, wow.
By starting to run paid ads. So the paid ads at that time, they were different. The algorithm was different. I don't want to use the word easier, but I think it was a little lower barrier to get the results than it is today. But long story short is that like that changed everything. And that's just one experience, one company, I'm just one guy. Now you think about everybody else who did that, the big brands that did that, all the companies that started to pull advertising from TV, radio, and make that adjustment to social media and digital advertising. And yeah, I mean, it was a monumental shift. Now I think it's going to, it's always going to even out, and people are going to find their strides in other areas of marketing. But for a decent window of time there, like it was pretty revolutionary, and it really disrupted the way people were spending money in advertising. Like it was huge. So yeah, I mean, I think it in some degree leveled the playing field. I think it made it accessible to people with zero budget, and it made it even crazier for people who had budget to burn. So
I can imagine. And just to piggyback off of that, we do a segment called No Dumb Questions every week, where we let a viewer listener send in a question for our future guest. And this week from social media, we got a question that kind of goes right into what we're talking about. And they want to know, is social media in 2024 a good enough method of marketing to sustain a business or to grow a business, as opposed to the traditional means of, print media or, any of the other, older methods of marketing? Do you think that, I guess what they're asking is, can their business be sustained off of just social media alone?
100%, but it comes down to how you build that audience and how you basically gain following and capture people's attention. Like social media right now, in my opinion, it fits into like, when you go to the grocery store and you get the basics, milk, bread, eggs, that kind of thing. When it comes to marketing, social media falls within that milk, eggs, and bread type thing. Like there's no reason not to do it. A, it's free. B, like the limitations that are on it, as far as like you getting to advertise and be your authentic self through social media, it's wide open, man. Like there's no reason not to do it. Now I think the question, and maybe to better answer it for that person, is the expectation that you would put on it. So what's your expectation of social media? If I were you, I would look at each platform, and I would decide what I want my expectation to be by platform, and then let it be that. Like, don't let it be your sales team. Don't let it be your ROI revenue driver. Don't let it be let it be what it's meant to be. So in most cases, if you're not putting any budget through it, and I'm just using it as a branding tool or an awareness thing, then, criticize it or judge it based off of that. Just use it as a branding tool. Use it as a way to put your message out there and build brand and audience, and like just give it the proper expectations is all I'm saying. Because unfortunately, a lot of people, they put the expectation of success on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've been doing all this stuff on Facebook and I haven't made any sales. And it's like, okay, but did you think it would give you sales? Because that's probably not what it's meant to do. Like, you have to align those expectations with what you're doing on it. But as far as just whether or not you should be there, 100% you should be there. But I will preface this is, don't be where you don't have time to basically moderate and take care, and like be where you have time to take care of it. So like what I mean by that is if you don't have time for LinkedIn, don't go on LinkedIn. Just tape. I mean, you might squat on the account and save it for later, but don't launch it if you're not going to be consistent with it. Consistency is like one of the biggest things with social media, and the algorithms, the platforms themselves love that consistency. So if you launch that Facebook page, that X account, the TikTok or whatever, just make sure you're consistent with it. And yes, if you can do more, that's great, but it's really more about consistency. So that whether that's twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it is, just make sure you're constantly feeding it and taking care of it. And over time, yeah, you will definitely see some benefits for it. And then strategically, if you get your expectations in line, it could be a powerful just branding tool, or just a extension of your voice and how you communicate with your clients or your audience.
Cool. And then our final segment that we normally go to is called "We Have to Ask, but You Do Not Have to Answer." And again, I repeat, you don't have to answer. Sometimes it's off the wall, sometimes it's not. This week, the question is, what's the weirdest job a client has ever asked you to do?
The weirdest job a client has ever asked me to do. I don't know if it's the weirdest job, but I got roped into a project one time where I was white labeled and didn't know it. If like, so here's the story. I got white labeled for a project and I didn't know it until I got a call from the actual client.
Mm-hmm.
So here, let me back up.
Well, what is white labeling for those who don't know?
Okay, so I won't give you the name, but there's 2 famous YouTubers that basically needed a website build, and we got contacted through a third-party company who said that they represented these YouTubers. And okay, like, I didn't ask questions, I just worked with them. So we ended up doing a whole bunch of work for these guys, kind of in my mind thinking that we were, these famous YouTubers actually knew who we were, and that they knew that this relationship was happening. And it was actually one of those things where we were kind of excited about it because it was a pretty big opportunity. And these YouTubers have a huge following, and they're pseudo connected to the Kardashians, and there's just a lot of cool opportunity there. Mm-hmm. And the white labeling, just the definition of is somebody contracted us to do the work and took credit for it. So we didn't know that we were being white labeled because nobody said anything. And we just assumed that, that we were kind of inside of this great opportunity. Well, what happened was we did the project and everything went great. And we ended up kind of having this relationship with this company for a while. And we just kind of went about our business thinking that, eventually something's going to come from this. Well, all of a sudden I get a phone call one day, and this guy says, "Hey, I'm calling because I represent these 2 YouTubers, and I'd just like to ask you a couple questions." And I was thinking, sweet, here comes that second opportunity, or here comes that follow-up. Because I was thinking that this was, because we really did do a great job for them, and we did it on a pretty decent budget, and we did it in a short amount of time. And I thought, man, with how we handled that, this has got to be something good. Well, all of a sudden I get on the phone with this guy who called me, and I said, "Hey, this is Mike Brevik from Cyberdogs, and I'm just following up on your call." And this guy just lays into me. And he's like, hey, why don't you tell us why you price gouge this? And all of a sudden he just kind of attacked me on who I am and what I do and where I get off, claiming that I did all these different things. And I was like, well, I said, you do know that we did this, and you do know that this project happened, and you do know that, like, we ended up coming into this project for this reason. And I ended up trying to explain just my existence in this whole thing to this guy who had no clue who I was. And he basically thought and accused me of being kind of a plant, so to speak. He's like, you're just friends with this other guy, and they're using your company to funnel money through. And I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was crazy is as I'm kind of debating this guy and trying to figure out really what's going on, all of a sudden I hear the two YouTubers jump in. So now these two famous YouTubers are just blasting me on this phone call. And I was kind of geeking out, like, oh my God, it's them. So like I was kind of celebrity in a way, kind of geeking out that I was getting to hear the voices directly from these two YouTubers. But yeah, they were just laying into me too, because they were trying to figure out what was going on. Well, long story short, they were not very happy and blah, 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 blah. But they eventually connected the dots that the guy that they had hired to do all this work, he was outsourcing and ended up, again, white labeling it to us and didn't tell them. He was like, I don't know if they asked the right questions, and I'm not even saying this guy did anything wrong, but somewhere something got lost in the translation of who was doing what. And not only did they have no idea who I was or what we did or like even the work that we did for them, but they apparently didn't even know that they had paid us and weren't too happy about it. So if you can imagine the relationship didn't go very far after that. And I don't know that those guys would ever hear this podcast, but I apologize for the confusion. So
yeah, so it's,
Yeah.
so it's almost like for Anthony, for us, it would be a drop shipper.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's a drop shipper. The old, oh, look, you can send this, but don't put your name on it. Don't do anything. We'll handle all that. Just do this part here and give it to us, and we'll be done with it.
Yeah, but the bummer was I didn't know that's
right.
It. Put it this way: if the guy would have told me that this is what we're doing, I would have at least had kind of a clue to how to, how to handle it. But yeah, I had no idea, and I walked into it just wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking I was going to get to talk to these. I was excited,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a kick in the shorts at the end of the day. But whatever, you learn over time. So,
well, I appreciate all of your time today, Mike. Michael, before we let Mike go, is there any final questions you have for him?
I have one, and Mike's question is a simple one. I don't know if it's a long answer or not, but how did you come up with the name Cyberdogs?
That's a great question. I get this all the time, and spoiler alert, it's not that great of an answer. So way back in the day, like we're talking like 2000, 2001, a buddy of mine, his name's Joe, he still works with us. Him and I used to just build websites for beer and pizza. And there was a local company called Cyberduck, and I just thought they was always kind of a cool name and a cool logo. And I needed something to put on my taxes. So like my tax guy is like, do you have an LLC? And I'm like, I don't even know what an LLC is. And he's like, well, you need an LLC if you're going to be doing all these projects on the side and stuff. So I created an LLC and we did it. I did Cyberdogs as the name just because I was kind of paying an homage to this Cyberduck. And that's as far as it ever went. And literally, like, it's not just a cliche. Like, we were literally building websites and stuff for beer and pizza and just a couple 20-some-year-old guys having a good time. That's all it amounted to. So when I got to the point in my career where I was going to leave corporate and start my own business, I had done name generations and stuff before. So I had generated a name list of all the, integrity marketing and all those fancy marketing names like everybody else does, a pretty massive list. And I had just slid Cyberdogs in there as kind of a throwaway, kind of a sacrificial lamb, so to speak. And I sent an email out to 19 different, I think it was 17, 19 anyway, just under 20. I sent that email out to all these people to just, hey, can I get your opinion on this name list? I'm starting my own business and here's what it's about and whatever. And of that complete list, every piece of feedback I got, Cyberdogs came back in the top 3 every time. And no other name on that list did. So even for me, like Cyberdogs was not a contender, but when I got, all the feedback from my colleagues within the marketing industry, and Cyberdogs is always in the top 3, not always number 1 either. Sometimes it was 2 or 3, but I just thought that kind of sent a message that like that name has some traction to it. Like, I don't know why people, like, I don't even, like, we've built a brand around it. So like, if you look us up, we've built lore and kind of methodology and kind of brand around the name now after the fact. But at the time, like, I didn't even know what a Cyberdog was. Like, I just, I just threw it in there as a sacrificial lamb and people liked it. So we went with it.
That's great.
That's awesome. That's really unique.
And I like it now. Like, but at the time I was kind of at a moral crossroads because I'm like, do I just pick a name that, do I just go with this or what do I do? But yeah, we went with it and here we are 9 years down the road. So
nice. Awesome. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to leave the people with, Mike? Anywhere they can follow you? Obviously you have a website. What would you like to share with people?
Yeah, you could find us at cyberdogsmarketing.com, and that's CYBERDOGZ marketing.com. I have a podcast called Brand Retro where it's really geared more around entrepreneurship, a lot of stuff like this that we've talked about, but entrepreneurship, branding, marketing, those kinds of things. So that's my podcast. And yeah, just me personally, like I'm into the stuff you guys are into. So like this has been fun talking. And if you want to do it again, I'd be down. So I'm into, I do
maybe
a lot
even
of
have
different
you
things.
on for collectibles stuff with Collecting Profit.
Yeah, if you want to talk retro Air Jordans or classic cars or sports memorabilia, I'm down. So
for sure.
For sure. Speaking of Collecting Profit, Michael, you want to share anything with the people before we let you go?
We are rolling along, man. We're getting ready for it's not we're inching closer to triple digits. Next week will be 85 weeks in a row we've done Collecting Profit. Anthony and I did the first 60 together, and he had to leave, and he's allowed me to keep the name and keep moving forward, which does go ahead and one of the things when I know I'm talking more than I probably should, but one of the things you had mentioned which made me think about was when Anthony left was, hey, wow, what do I do? Do I keep the name? Do I rebrand? So on and so forth. And so, you're about, like what you were talking about of companies having to make that decision. Well, even I had to make the decision, and Anthony was graceful enough to say, hey, look, just keep going with it. So we'll hit episode number 85 next week. And, we're going to keep rolling on, hopefully we get, keep moving forward and stuff like that. So it's a passion. It's a great thing. So come on over, check it out. Again, there's always a plan for the conversation. And, one thing that has not changed with Collecting Profit, even when Anthony and I started, there was always a plan, and the plan lasts for about the first 8 to 10 minutes. And then after that, once the chat starts and the audience and the guests that, when I have guests on, once it just kind of, it goes where it goes. So that, like I said in the beginning, Mike, about, hey, when you do these, you be yourself and you let it go. And that was one of the things, that fortunately enough, we were able to go ahead and do in the beginning. And I've kept doing that. So come on over, Collecting Profit. We do our thing. There's a whole team. This is it. This is the marketing team. This is the advertising. This is the whole team right here. But so come on, check us out.
He does a great job, guys. Not just because I was on the show with him, but he genuinely is. He does a wonderful job, especially if you like cards. And speaking of which, if you like cards, you like traveling, you like crazy people from Pittsburgh, come check out Picksburgh, which will be where I'm going to upload the video version of this podcast as well. So if you want to see all of our smiling faces and see how handsome we are, you can come over to YouTube and you can find out. Or if you like our radio voices, make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other streaming platforms that you like. Till the next episode, guys, appreciate you watching. May God bless you.
The city is